IAS. Today we will be discussing daily current affairs of 8th of December 2022. So let's start with the first news of the day. Before that, let us see the news that we are going to discuss in today's current affairs session. The first news is just energy transition participation. In Economy Today, I have taken this news from the Hindu. The RBI has increased the repo rate by 35 base points. So we will see that it is a usual downgradation from its traditional approach of increasing or decreasing the policy rate by 50 base points. The third news of the day is about comprehensive accessibility audit. The fourth news is Paris Club. The fifth news is China Indian Ocean Region Forum. So the first news is about the just energy transition participation. So why just energy transition participation in news? It is because that global efforts. It is because of the global efforts to bring India on board the just transition participation. It has failed with G7 nation. So that means India is not a participant in just energy transition participation. Now, what happened? The G7 countries, they decided to launch this partnership with India, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Senegal this year. However, as per the news, it has failed. Now, basically, what is the aim of this partnership? The G7 countries are trying to bring the large developing economies to move away from coal in their electricity system, and so that these developing nations or these developing economies can achieve Paris climate goals. Now, what happens that in case of India, India is heavily dependent on coal for the electricity generation via thermal power plants, right? So electricity generation via thermal power plants. So this is the aim of G7 countries initiative of just energy transition participation is to bring these developing economies to move away from coal. However, the developing economies such as India cannot do so for the next decade. Germany and US are the two GS7 nations that are basically co-leading this transition or this negotiation with India. However, India has not signed it. Let us see that if there are any developing countries that have signed this partnership with G7. Basically, this initiative is modeled after the South Africa's GETP launched, which was launched at Glasgow to COP26 with the support of the UK, US, France, Germany, and the European Union. So basically, South Africa, the developing nation, it has promised to finance in the first phase through the mechanism, and how much it has promised to finance $8.5 billion mechanisms via grants, loans, and investments to meet its nationally determined contribution goals. At the 27th G20 summit, which was conducted in Indonesia, Indonesia had announced the GETP partnership with the G7, which was co-led by Japan and USA for about $20 billion. So the Indonesian partnership is primarily focused to phase out coal from the economy. So developing nations such as South Africa and Indonesia has signed this partnership with the G7 nation. However, India has not signed because that India wants to negotiate on the negotiation at the table with its own transition plan, and it has refused to phase out the coal. Secondly, there are some differences in approach in which the coal has been talked about. US wants to include the decommission of the coal phase out as a part of the discussion. However, India is pursuing for climate funds for renewable energy, technology transfer, and the green jobs. Right. So far we discussed just energy transition partnership. Now let us move on to the economy today of 5th of December. Basically, RBI has raised the policy repo rate by 35 base point. Usually, RBI whenever increases or decreases the policy rates, it does so by 50 base points. The policy rate has been increased by 35 base points to 6.25%. Right. So at present, the policy repo rate is 6.25%. This news has been taken from the Hindu. Now, the central bank retained its inflation projection for the current financial year at 6.7 percentage, and it noted that inflation will ease out, but it will stay well above 6% upper tolerance limit. We know that RBI is given the mandate under the RBI Act of 1934 to maintain the inflation in the economy within the 4% to with the 2% to 4% limit, and plus minus 2% upper and lower limit. That means 2% is the lower limit and upper limit is the 6%. So maintenance has to be done at 4% with plus minus 2%. Right. So this is how the RBI is mandated to maintain the inflation. Right. According to the RBI's projection, the inflation will stay above 6%. Therefore, RBI has raised the repo rate. However, RBI now expects the inflation to average 5.9% in the January to March 2023. That is going to be the first quarter of the year, and then it will drop to 5% in the first quarter of 2023 in the next financial year, and it will edge up to 5.4%. So this is what the projection of RBI is. Right. So therefore, RBI raised the repo rate. Now let us talk about what is this repo rate. First, it is part of the liquidity adjustment facility, and repo rate is the rate at which the RBI lends to the commercial bank for their lending purposes. And reverse repo rate implies the rate at which the RBI takes loan or RBI takes money from the banks, right? So repo rate borrowing is generally available at the overnight repo, that is within 7 days, and 14 7-day repo. The commercial banks, they make repurchase agreement with the RBI and they sell the G securities. So basically, the rate at which the RBI sells G securities to the banks is called as the repo rate. So when repo rate is increased, it will discourage the banks to borrow money from the RBI, and it will also discourage lending to the customers. This will reduce the liquidity and demand in the market. Therefore, it is called as contractionary monetary policy. So liquidity in the market is decreased. When liquidity is decreased, inflation can be controlled, right? On the other hand, when repo rate is decreased, it will encourage the banks to borrow and lend it to customer, increasing the liquidity and demand in the market. So this is part of the expansionary monetary policy. So monetary policy or inflation via monetary policy is maintained in either qualitatively or quantitatively. Repo rate is part of the quantitative measure of the RBI to maintain inflation in the economy. Let's move on to the third news of the day. It is about the comprehensive accessibility audit. Now, recently, Chief Justice of India, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, has called for an accessibility audit in the Supreme Court for disabled person. Now, what happens? You must have heard about the Accessible India campaign. I'm sorry for my handwriting, but you must have heard about this Accessible India campaign. Basically, it is to make the public and private infrastructure accessible to the person with disabilities, so that they can easily access the public buildings and public infrastructure. The same, in pursuance of the Accessible India campaign, the Supreme Court Chief Justice of India has called for the accessibility audit. Now, in pursuant of this, a committee which will be chaired by the sitting judge of the court has been constituted. The aim is to understand the hardship faced by the person with disabilities or specially able person and ensure their better access to the justice system. Right. Let's move on. The committee is going to audit both physical as well as the technology accessibility, and it is going to basically prepare and release a questionnaire for the person with disabilities who visit the court premises. The report will contain the result of the audit and the survey. The report shall also recommend a proposal that will be geared towards making the justice system more accessible and barrier-free. Let's talk about the committee structure. It will be headed by the judge of the Supreme Court. An officer of the Supreme Court registry will be the member secretary, and the other members will involve the differently able persons who are employed in the Supreme Court at the Supreme Court, the differently abled advocate nominated by the Supreme Court Bar Association, a professor from the National Law School of India University, that is NALSAR, and a person who is going to be nominated by the Center for Disabilities at the national Nalsar University of Law. Right. So next news of the day is about the Paris Club. Now, Paris Club has proposed a 10-year moratorium on Sri Lanka debt and another 15-year of debt restructuring as a formula to resolve the Sri Lankan debt crisis. Now, recently, if you know that because of the political misadministration and the poor governance in Sri Lanka post COVID-19 had to face lot of economic distress, and in pursuant to help Sri Lanka, the Paris Club has proposed this 10-year moratorium and 15-year debt restructuring. Let us see what this Paris Club is. Basically, it's an informal group of creditor nation, those which are going to give credit to the nation, and it will provide a workable solution to payment problems faced by the debt nation. The member includes 22 permanent members, which are mostly Western European and Scandinavian nations, United States, United Kingdom, and Japan. India is not a member of Paris Club. This is to be noted, and it will be important from the prelims perspective. The background is basically this, that the club traces its meeting which happened in Paris between the officials from Argentina, which had trouble paying its debt with a group of lenders in 1956. So a Paris Club was formed so that to ease the problems that arises in paying the debt by the debt nation. The last news of the day is about the China Indian Ocean Region Forum. Now, China's top development aid agency convened the first, that is China Indian Ocean Region Forum, in the southwestern Chinese city of Kunming. See, Indian Ocean region is very important for India, and China currently eyes on Indian Ocean region. So the conduct of China Indian Ocean Region Forum by China raises a geopolitical question before India. Right. So, what is this forum? Basically, it is organized by China's International Development Cooperation Energy Agency, and theme is the shared development theory and practice from the perspective of the blue economy. So, from the mains perspective, you can prepare blue economy for your general studies paper 3, and what are the objectives of the blue economy policy of India, etc., etc. Now, let's talk about the participating countries, that who all participated in this forum. So, forum basically was attended by the high level representatives and the senior officials from 19 countries, that includes Indonesia, Pakistan, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Maldives, Nepal, Afghanistan, Iran, Oman, South Africa, Kenya, Mozambique, Tanzania, Seychelles, Madagascar, Mauritius, Djibouti, and Australia. See, Australia and Maldives, they have also released the statements which stated that they did not participate officially. Right. So, Australia and Maldives were unofficial participant. The outcome of the forum is, the forum issued a joint press statement that noticed that China's proposal to establish a marine disaster prevention and mitigation cooperation mechanism between China and countries in the Indian Ocean region. So basically, it is going to be a disaster prevention and mitigation cooperation between the China and countries who are the part of the Indian Ocean region. So all parties, they agreed to strengthen the policy of coordination, deepening the development cooperation, increasing resilience to the shock and disaster, enhance relevant countries' capacity to obtain economic benefit through the marine resource such as fisheries, renewable energy, tourism, and shipping in sustainable way. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching Tarun IAS. If you want to download the PDF of this session, you can go to the Telegram channel. The link will be given in the description below. Have a nice day.